Hi, it's Sam. In today's video, we're going to make a multi-tap delay using MC objects. This will allow us to more easily and cleanly make a multi-tap delay and also take advantage of some of the MC exclusive messages. So we're going to want to have a dry-wet mix, feedback, set the delay times, and the volume and panning of each tap. So let's start off by just kind of setting up the delay by adding the dry-wet mix. So I'm just going to use a live dial, and let's just name it dry-wet, and it'll be a float, or maybe I'll make it a percent. And it'll be a float between 0 and 100 with a default of, let's say, 50. And this is going to go to bang -1 with make it a floating point. And out of the right outlet, this will give us the kind of multiplication, the scaling amount. So when it's dry, we're going to multiply the dry signal by 1 and the wet signal by 0. And the opposite, when it's all the way to the wet, it'll be multiplied by 1 for the wet signal and 0 for the dry signal. But because we are working with audio signals, you want to make sure to smooth this out. So we're going to do this kind of simple setup that I've shown before, which is to use a line to make a quick fade to the new value. Okay. And then at the very end of the signal chain, we'll have the multiplication of the signals. And just so that we can make sure our levels don't kind of go all over the place, I'm just going to throw a limiter on the end here. And then this will all go into, let's use an MC live gain. And then an MC DAC, which we can send start window to start audio in this patcher and stop. So let's create a source for our delays. Let's use just a MC playlist. And let's plug in the dry signal in here. And let's throw in some different, let's see, maybe a drum loop, and okay, so we have some different sounds loaded in there. I just dragged it from the audio sidebar option here. So now we have some sources for our delay. Let's actually start to set up the delay now. So I want to make an 8-tap delay, and we already did the dry-wet, so that's taken care of. I want to make 8 taps, so I'm going to resize the incoming signal to be 8. So I'm going to say mc.resize and set it to 8 channels, and I want to turn on replicate. So what this says, when replicate is 0, any channels in the output that are not in the input will be set to 0. So I don't want that. I want to make sure that there's audio on every channel. So I'm going to put replicate on 1. and it'll just cycle through the channels if there are any missing information on any of the channels. Okay, so that's been resized. Now I can go to MC tap in. This is going to be the input to our delay line, and I'm going to make the maximum delay size just 2500 milliseconds, so 2.5 seconds. And then this needs to go to MC tap out to read from the delay line. And now if we want to add feedback, then we need to create a feedback loop that we can control the volume of. So we're just going to scale the feedback with a MC multiplication. And let's just create a live dial again. And let's put this feedback between 0 and 1. Oops, 0 and 1 as a float. And I'll call this feedback. And make sure that it's a floating point. And I want to restrict it between 0 and, actually, I don't want to do 1. I want to do 0.99 because 1 will blow up the feedback loop. So the output of the tap out will go into this feedback scaling here, and then we'll go back in to the tap in. And that gives us our feedback loop. Now, for the tap out, this is where we set the delay times. So let's set up a way to kind of generate different delay times. And we already set up the feedback, so that's good. So I'm going to use an MC sig for setting up with 8 channels to set up the delay time. And we can view the values using a JIT cell block. This is a nice way of being able to view the values that are stored. And I'm going to need to turn audio on to see that. So right now all channels set to 0. And so I'm going to use one of the MC exclusive messages, which is random range. And with this, you can just get a random range of numbers between whatever the first number is and the second number. So it's going to be a random numbers between 1 and 2500. And of course, you could change these numbers to whatever you'd like. Since I said the maximum delay is 2500, that's why I put 2500 as the upper. Maybe I want to change this so that it's at least, I don't know, like 250 milliseconds, something like that. And then I can just click on this to get new values. And maybe I'll use a load bang so that when the patch starts, I send in some values. Okay, so that sets up the values for the delay time. So I'm going to plug this into the tap out. However, when I make changes, I will get kind of some artifacts, so I might want to smooth that out. Let's just listen to what that sounds like later, and then we can smooth out the signals, because the same thing will be true of the panning and volume. So we have the delay time set up using random range. Now let's figure out what we're going to do with the volume. So for the volume, it's going to be pretty straightforward. We can just use an MC multiplication object and then send a list of the values for each channel. So again, I'm going to use MC sig with the 8 channels because we still have 8 channels that we're trying to control, and that'll go in here. Now to set this, we can also view this. I'm going to use a different a different MC message. And this one is going to be spread include second. And this is going to go between some number and some other number. So this is going to give me a spread of numbers between the first number, exclusive of the first number, and the second number, which will be inclusive. And this will make more sense when we look at the output. And to set this up, I'm just going to use a depth slider kind of thing. So I'll just copy this feedback. Instead of 0 to 0.99, I'll make it 0 to 1. And I'll call this depth. And this is going to be the volume. So maybe I'll say volume here as well. And over here, I'll say delay times. And so this is going to be 0 to 1. And at 0, I want all the values to be 0.5. So what I can do is multiply the output by 0.5. And at 1, I want it to go from 0 to 1. So I'm going to I'm going to subtract the output from 0.5 and also add 0.5 and then pack those together. And we can see what the output is. So let's take a look at what comes out. So at 0, it's going to be 0.5 to 0.5. At 1, it's going to be 0 to 1. Now, the reason that I chose to use include second is because I want to make sure that I'm not including 0. I mean, you could if you want to, but if it's set to 0, then that delay tap is going to be silent. And I don't want any of these to be silent, so I just decided to make it include second. So include first would do the opposite. So it's going to start at 0 and then go not include the second number, the 1. So it stops at 0.88, or it equally divides it, but not including the 1 going to 1. And then there's also just, I believe there's also just spread. There's also spread inclusive, which goes 0 to 1. So that includes both numbers. And then I think, isn't there just also spread? Let's see. Spread, include first, include second, inclusive, exclusive. There's also exclusive. Spread does the same, it looks like, as the include first. And then what was the other option? Spread, exclusive. Is acting a little bit differently as well. So there's different options here, but I'm going to keep this as spread include second so that we go from so we still have some volume on the first tap and then full volume on the last. Now, lastly, we're going to add panning. And so to do this, we're going to use MC stereo. And I'm going to set auto gain to 1, which will scale the signal by the number of channels because I don't want to make the volume too crazy. And in the right inlet is where we're going to control the panning. So let's bring this down a little bit. We're going to do something similar with the panning, except this time I'm going to use spread inclusive so that when it's at 1, we're going to pan from hard left to hard right, and at 0, we're just going to be all in the center. And then this is going to be plugged into the right inlet. And then I think I'm going to add another gain, just in case this is not loud enough. And there's a quick way to, let me see, make a dial, go to prototype gain, and then let's not go up to 30 decibels. Let's do like, let's just go up to 6. And then from here, I can take the output of the left and say dB to A, and that'll go from decibels to amplitude. And now I can scale this value. And let's do the same thing as before. Let's just add a little bit of smoothing using MC line. So this way I can add a little bit of gain if it's not loud enough because of the auto gain. But this is, I'm trying to make sure that everything doesn't go too crazy. When we have these 8 taps, it can get loud. Then we can plug it in here, which is our wet scaling, and we should be all set. So let's take a look at what this is doing now. Let's keep everything at 0. And let's turn up the dry wet a little bit. And let's take a listen to the first sound file. Looks like everything is going through. Oh, you know what? Something is not. Oh, so I needed to wiggle the gain dial to send in the value here. Okay. Can try some feedback. Let me turn up the gain a little bit of the. Okay, now what happens if I change the delay times? Let's see how that sounds. And also maybe I'll kind of move some of the other knobs to make sure everything's moving okay. Okay, so it seems like when I change the delay times, I'm getting clicks. So we should add some smoothing to that. And that's kind of up to you, kind of like a Verispeed, or I don't know, kind of like analog setup would have that kind of pitch change. So depending on how much of that you want to hear, you could adjust that. So I'm going to use a load mess of 100, so for 100 milliseconds, which I'm going to change to samples. And I'm going to send that to a slide so that I can slide to the new delay values. And I'm going to do the same for the volume and panning, just to make sure that it stays smooth. And I'll do a little bit shorter though, like 20 milliseconds. Okay, let's see if this sounds a little bit better now. So one challenge I have for you is to try using the stereo LFO we made. Maybe you can find a way to turn it into like an MC object and control the delay times, feedback, the volume depth, or just have random volumes going, random pannings moving around, so make this more dynamic. And that's one way to kind of add even more interest to this effect. But this is a good starting place, and you can get a sense of how to use some of the different MC messages to easily set up the different parameters that you have in your MC patch. Hope you found this useful. Let me know if you have any questions or clarifications. Otherwise, until next time, class is dismissed.